Take two. And we are recording with Dr. Makis on Wednesday, August 9th, 2023 at 2:40 p.m. Eastern time. For everybody watching and listening, I just had something that is, I think, has only ever happened on here once before, where it doesn't connect to the Rumble server, and it makes me look like a bumbling idiot as I sit here and tell the guest how I've done 1,300 episodes and I'm pretty good at this. And then I do the equivalent of getting on a bicycle with training wheels and falling on my face and knocking both my teeth out. So, with that less than professional beginning, Dr. Makis, please introduce yourself, sir.
Thank you very much for having me. I'm a Canadian physician, radiologist, oncologist with a background in immunology. And last couple of years, I've been basically pounding the table about the COVID vaccines, vaccine mandates, vaccine passports, that kind of stuff.
Awesome. And as I was just telling you beforehand, when I was posting the live link, I now have to post a new live link because obviously the last one didn't work. But so what would you say now? So what? It's August 9th, 2023, where we've everyone's aware of the meme. What's the difference between a conspiracy theory and news? It's 12 to 18 months. Yeah, hardy har har. Yeah, I get it. I find it less funny because I was permanently banned from YouTube and iTunes and Reddit, and it took a massive hit on the income of this show. So I'd find the memes less funny and more infuriating. But now that we are kind of where we are now, and we've seen that there are still ongoing problems with shots and with injuries and with origins, right? It is no longer a xenophobic jingoistic cry to war to say that this came from a lab. Now it's like, well, of course we do. It came from a lab, but no one's allowed to say that until the almighty hand of the state comes down and says, you may now hold this opinion. On that, what are some things that you have been pounding your fist on the table about that maybe haven't been started to be reckoned? Or it's still, the Overton window still hasn't shifted to say, all right, so these things are causing heart attacks or myocarditis or, foot-long blood clots that look like a prop from an alien movie. What things have you been yelling about that still haven't been shifted into the normal, I guess, light of discourse?
Well, there's still a lot. I'm really against vaccinating kids with these things. Vaccinating pregnant women with these things. I mean, it should be taken off the market. If you're an adult and you want to take an experimental injection and the powers that be have approved it, then by all means, have at it, right? Yeah. I mean, go to town. But the fact that we're still giving these experimental shots to kids, let's say high school kids, who are then dropping dead in class with heart attacks and strokes and brain bleeds, high school athletes that are collapsing on the field, collapsing at track meets or hockey games and so on. The fact that we're still giving these shots to these healthy young kids and pretending that they're perfectly safe and that all these sudden deaths are random and have nothing to do with the shots, that frustrates me the most. Same thing with the pregnant women. Like here in Alberta, Canada, they're saying, if you're pregnant, take the shot at any time. Take it first trimester, second trimester, third trimester, and I can show you congenital malformations of babies if you take the shots in the first trimester. I can show you miscarriages. I can show you fetuses that stop growing within 24 hours of the mother taking Pfizer or Moderna. I can show you, and not one or two. These are not 1 in a million cases. I can show you dozens at a time. And the fact that we're still pretending that this is okay and that all this damage that's being done, is random and not related, that still blows my mind that we're still in this place. It's almost like we're people are living in two different realities, right? We've got the group that see what's going on and are like, what the hell? Get these shots off the market. And, let's at least investigate these sudden deaths. And then you've got another group that's living in an alternate reality where it's like, none of this is happening and it's all random and it's always happened before.
There's so many odd historical precedences that if you just glanced at, you wouldn't see a similarity to. But the more you can dig under the surface, you start to see common themes. And I don't even necessarily mean with vaccines. There's a great book I love called Blitzed by Norman Ohler. I had him on here right when I started the show. It's a drug use in the Third Reich. And it's fascinating, right? It's the use of pill form crystal methamphetamine called Pervitin, and it was used during the Blitzkrieg, and then Hitler started using something called the Eucadol, which I think was like a precursor to Vicodin or something. But the point is you can see how drugs influence the higher up. I think Goering was addicted to morphine. And at first you go, yeah, well, it's helping them, right? They take down Poland in like what, 72 hours? Like wild stuff. But as the war progresses and Hitler falls more and more into this cocoon, he had a doctor named Dr. Theodor Morell, who I don't even think was a real doctor, just injecting him with stuff every day. You can find like his daily routine. And if it wasn't in German and from like a World War II museum, you'd think it was like Keith Richards or Hunter S. Thompson. It's wild stuff. Like what he wakes up with doses that would kill you and I. But my point of all of this is as he went deeper and deeper into this drug induced psychosis and then literally went deeper and deeper into the Fuhrer bunker, he would stop listening to any generals that said anything that went against what he thought was going on. And then it goes one step further. Some generals said that it was so stressful to go in and talk to Hitler that they would go to Dr. Morell, like outside the conference room, and be like, dog, you got to hit me up. And right, so they give them a shot. And so they'd get jacked up and they'd go in and they'd start to almost see what Hitler saw. My point is with all of this is it's symbolic of when there is no outside needle piercing your zone of unreality, you can keep going on. Because what do they feel? They're in a bunker under 30 feet of cement. If I say we're taking Russia tomorrow, then we're taking Russia tomorrow. It doesn't matter that we've just lost 1 million soldiers at Stalingrad. But in the outside world, reality is going unchecked. Reality does not care. Artillery shells do not care about what your drug induced psychosis is showing. And then eventually it comes to the doorstep and Hitler shoots himself and they lose the war. But I can't help but feel we're still in this weird, like there are still colleges mandating the shots this fall. And
Yeah.
it's, if no one's going to pierce their zone of unreality, and that's a line from the book, a zone of unreality, if no one's going to pierce it, then why would they stop demanding people take these shots? But on the outside, we're seeing the equivalent of the soldiers dying at Stalingrad or Leningrad. It's the young people dropping dead. But if you bring it up, you're piercing the zone of unreality.
Yeah. That's very interesting because I'm seeing this, what you just described, I'm seeing it in the medical field, right? So I'll look at all the doctors, the MDs posting stuff online. They're like, yeah, get your fall booster shot, COVID booster shot as soon as possible, and all this stuff. And it's like there are literally thousands of people online. Let's just take Twitter, right? There's literally thousands of people on Twitter posting daily. I've lost, my family member. I've lost my son. I've lost my dad. They're posting photos. They're posting obituaries. Like you cannot go on Twitter and even just accidentally not run into hundreds, if not thousands, of these sudden deaths of young people who were perfectly healthy. And all that happened was they took a shot or several shots and now they're dead or they've got end stage cancer, right? And so these doctors are just coming on and they're just pretending like there's no damage. There's no myocarditis. There's no, like people are not dropping dead left and right. And they're just pushing the shots as they did before, like as if nothing's happened over the last 2.5 years. Right. And you also see this with people who are kind of strongly politically aligned. So, in Canada, you will see people who are strong, like liberal supporters or NDP supporters. That's another leftist party. They'll be obsessed with the shots and they'll have this whole anti-vaxxer thing. And if you go against the narrative in any way, you're far right, conspiracy theorist, anti-vaxxer, white supremacist, misogynist, racist, you name it, right? And you sort of go through their posts and you realize like they're not playing, they're not acting, they actually believe this stuff. Like they're immersed in this, like you said, in this sort of unreal world, or that they just can't seem to even fathom that, let's say, anything that I might be posting is even remotely correct. They're basically saying that I'm crazy, that I'm a total lunatic, conspiracy theorist, what have you, just because I'm raising concerns about the shots, for example, right? So there's a lot of people that are so immersed in this narrative and this view, and 2.5 years later, like nothing's changed their mind.
It's almost like was I think it was Solzhenitsyn. I still haven't read Gulag Archipelago. I really need to, but I think there's a line from it where it's basically like you won't be able to convince the people that there's a Marxist revolution in their country until he has some line where no, maybe it was Yuri Bezmenov, the KGB defector. I think it was him who was like they will not know until a boot hits their fat butt and the gulag doors close behind them. Right, but by
Yeah,
then, or and the other kind of more meme is like you vote yourself into socialism, you shoot yourself out.
yeah.
It almost seems to be this thing where it's none of it's real until it's at the front door, and like it's almost it's more terrifying the true believers, right? And
Mhm.
I try to I really do try to understand it. Like, where is it coming from? Like, I graduated the University of Georgia in 2013. I was a biology major. I published research in aquatic toxicology. I scored in the top 4% on the MCAT. I got into medical school at the University of Miami. I got into pharmacy school. I ultimately decided not to go for personal reasons, just wasn't happy. But I can still feel like a certain like love for it. I loved everything about it. I loved volunteering at the hospital. I loved the white coat. I loved putting on the gloves. I loved like the face mask. It was all so high tech, and the sterilized rooms. Like I just absolutely fell for it. Even if, my job was going through the cabinets and making sure none of the vials were, you know, expired. I just loved everything from the fluorescent lighting to like the clean floors. Like I just fell in love with medicine, and I still have like I can still feel like the butterflies. Like it really is just the coolest. And you know, I decided not to go, and it's been 10 years. But I can imagine if I had dedicated my life to it. There are a lot of guys that I was friends with, same college class. Some even went to the same medical school. I mean, 4 years med school, so they all finished I think spring 2018. A lot of them are still finishing up residency right now. I can imagine if you were to dedicate your whole life to it, there would probably be a certain level of difficulty in saying that something's wrong or that the science is not settled. The mother crying at the death row, the sentencing of like a murder. Some guy could kill 50 people. There'll never not be a mother there saying, "Don't kill my baby," right? And then to a degree, it's beautiful. Do you think there's something to do with that? Because that's what gets me is the doctor still going along with it. What do
Yeah.
you think about? And again, legally, I should say this is all wild speculation. What do you think is that?
Yeah, I've been trying to think back to my medical school days, and what you described, like, the love of medicine, I kind of went through the same thing. I started volunteering at a hospital in downtown Toronto when I was like 17, and
Yeah,
basically I was pushing cart with drugs,
yeah, yeah.
to all the different departments. I was, delivering X-rays. I was, logistics assistant, right? I was delivering patients to their uh, places where they had to go. So, and I had that same love of medicine. And I was thinking about it, because like we all went through, like I went to med school in McGill University in Montreal, which was considered one of the top, medical schools, I guess top medical school in Canada, with University of Toronto. They always fought for the first two places. And I thought, well, I mean, I was trained to basically, be sort of honest, ethical, to not be sort of a drug pusher, to not be pushing any particular pharmaceutical company or product. We were taught to really be kind of ethical in that sense. And so I thought, well, where is this coming from? Why are so many doctors willing to lay everything on the line to push this one product to protect this one company, whether Pfizer or Moderna or AstraZeneca, whatever, and to like literally go all in, right? Like no matter what, at any cost. Why are so many doctors willing to do that? And I don't think it's coming out of the training, out of the med school training, because I had the same training and I didn't have that, right? Like I don't have that sort of desire to protect a pharmaceutical company, right? Or push a product that is clearly toxic and has tons of adverse events, but you're blindly pushing it at all costs. So it's got to be coming from somewhere else. And I realized that after I graduated med school, that at least for the first few years, I implicitly trusted all the medical associations, all the medical institutions, the entire hierarchy of medicine. I trusted the journals, Nature, Lancet, JAMA. I trusted that, those journals were behaving ethically and publishing, research ethically and so on. I trusted the medical boards, the medical colleges. I trusted the medical associations that put out the various guidelines and recommendations. And over time, I ran into a bit of corruption in medicine. And you think, okay, well, there's corruption everywhere, a little bit of corruption, right? There's always some bad apples. But I was so naive. I had no idea just how bad the corruption in medicine was. And as I got into some conflicts in my specialty, and I started seeing what these medical boards and associations were doing to me, for example, I realized like, whoa, like there is massive amounts of corruption in medicine that most doctors are simply not aware of. So I think it comes down to something like that, is that unless you've experienced something extraordinary as a doctor in medicine where you're like, okay, this system is completely rotten, completely corrupt, because they usually keep it under wraps. The lawyers paper over everything. Like the corruption in medicine usually doesn't get out, right? Even you look at something like Vioxx. I mean, it took like a decade for, the medical establishment to kind of accept that, yes, it was causing tens of thousands of heart attacks.
What's Vioxx?
And so Vioxx was a pain medication that was widely used, but it was causing heart attacks. And the pharmaceutical company knew about it, tried to keep it under wraps, went after doctors who were speaking out about Vioxx. And it took, I don't know, something like a decade for the medical establishment to accept that, yes, tens of thousands of people ended up having heart attacks because of this drug and ended up pulling it off the market. But it took a while. Like it took a while to come to that realization. So, I mean, if your typical doctor hasn't experienced that kind of corruption in medicine, they will trust the institutions. And here's the thing, is that, in my view, what was deliberate and what was brilliantly done, especially in Canada, I can't really speak that much for the United States because, of course, US is much bigger, much more diverse than Canada. But I can tell you in Canada, all the institutions and institutional leaders in medicine were captured very early on. So they either had people that they knew would be compliant from the beginning, or they put them in ahead of time, but they hit the medical field very early on, and they hit it hard. And even before the vaccines rolled out, they had the colleges warning doctors, you cannot issue exemption letters for masks. You cannot issue, and then of course when the vaccines came out, doctors were forbidden for issuing exemption letters for vaccines. Doctors were forbidden from prescribing ivermectin, hydroxychloroquine. That had never happened before. But they hit the medical authorities early with the narrative. And they made sure that everyone across Canada was pushing the same narrative. And then I think the doctors probably didn't even realize what was going on. And then once this stuff starts trickling down from the medical associations and the colleges and the various health authorities, you believe it, because why would they lie to you?
And that kind of comes on to like another level of damage that's happening. And it's once people finally do come to peace with, or at the very least accept and acknowledge that, there's been some, to put it, I guess, politely, some goofiness in the last couple of years. Well, then the next natural question is, well, what else have I been lied to about? There's a comedian I love named Duncan Trussell, and I remember listening to him years and years and years ago. And he's like, He's like, you go to like Catholic, like I went to private Catholic school, and he's like, you go up in these private Catholic schools, and they tell you, you take one hit of marijuana, and you're gonna be robbing banks in a week, and it scares you. And then you finally get to college, and you rip a bong, and you watch a stupid movie, and you wake up, and you feel fine, and you go, well, that was BS. And then you go, well, what else were they lying about? They also said that you should never try meth, not even once. Well, they were right about that. But now you're 18 and you're going, well, they lied about that. They said marijuana was the devil, and I ate a bunch of cookies and fell asleep on a couch. So what's wrong with meth? Well, there is a lot wrong with meth. And I think we're going to see that is where you have people now who have been told no matter what, you do not question the high priests with the white coats. You do not question it. And now you have a friend that dropped dead, or an uncle with pericarditis, or Guillain-Barré syndrome, or something. And now they're looking at you and you're going, well, why am I taking a multivitamin? Why do I need a tetanus shot?
Yeah.
And correctly, why wouldn't you start to question if it's so egregious? It's one thing if they push the shot and I don't know, it turned your facial hair, red. You became a ginger, like, my brother, right? Oh, they made me a ginger. Screw them. It's not the worst thing in the world. Whatever. Some girls like it. But it's not that. It's heart attacks and like young Olympians.
Yeah.
Why would you not, rightfully so, start to say, yeah, you know what? I have chest pain and it's going down my left arm and it looks like a heart attack, but I'm not going to listen to WebMD. Why wouldn't you? My mom, her face is drooping and she's slurring her words, but why should I take her? Why? It doesn't look like a stroke. They lied to me about this. And now I think that's when you're going to start to see the real fallout of this is people not going and getting legitimate help because rightfully so, they were duped.
Yeah, the thing is medicine relies a lot on trust,
Yeah.
right? And it's like you've got someone, I always think of it as you've got someone in a vulnerable, like a patient's in a vulnerable state, almost always, right? It's a vulnerable state. There's something wrong with your health, and you don't know what to do. You can't, let's say, fix it yourself. You trust this trained individual, this trained doctor, to help you out in this vulnerable state and to do what's best for you, like to have your best interest in their heart, right? Like that takes trust. That takes a lot of trust, right? That takes even potentially maybe even more trust than, let's say, trusting your priest or what have you, right? Like that's a serious trust. And as doctors, we sort of we earn that trust by being ethical and by keeping up on our studies and continuing education and all that stuff. And then something like this happens, and where doctors just literally crap the bed, right, for a lack of a better term, and the trust is gone, right? Like now you've got the doctors were pushing jabs that were clearly not safe. Forget the effectiveness, right? But they were not safe. That was the key. People are getting harmed by the thousand. I mean, at this point, I think there's everybody has someone in their family who probably was either injured or killed by the shots, right? I there's probably very few families at this point that haven't been impacted directly by the vaccines in one way or another. Even my family, there's been someone who's died, a young person, a doctor, who's died from the shot. So once that trust is gone, like that, like you said, there's going to be so much collateral damage from that, because when that trust is gone, now you're not going to trust your doctor for anything. If your doctor gave you a jab that caused miscarriage or that gave you a heart attack or stroke, man, you're not going to go to that doctor. You're not going to trust that doctor with anything. With regular childhood vaccinations, you're not going to trust them with, like you said, maybe you're having, signs or symptoms. Like people are telling me that they're afraid. They're literally now afraid to go to their doctor, and it has to be something like they have to be on death's door to consider going to a doctor again, because they're so afraid, because that trust is completely gone. And that, I think, is going to be really bad for the field of medicine. And I think that, I mean, we could lose that trust for a generation. Right? That is extremely difficult if people are not if people don't face consequences, and right now we've seen nobody face consequences for anything that's been done during the pandemic. And if no one faces any consequences, I don't see how medicine is going to get that trust back until so much time passes that people forget and move on. But that trust is key, and I think we've lost it.
Yeah, it'll eventually come back. And
Or it'll shift, right? Like it'll basically shift. With doctors have to come out and say, look, the shots are toxic. I'm going to have a different kind of practice. I'm going to, treat the vaccine injured, what have you. And you're going to see probably a shift of trust to different individuals, people who, held up their oath, stuck to their oath, and have decided to practice medicine differently.
hmm. Yeah, sometimes I feel like that, but then like the disillusion part of me, it's like I don't know. Part of me thinks it's just gonna keep on trucking, and no one's if there are zero repercussions, why would it realistically change?
Too many bodies, too much death, too much destruction. And I can tell you, if I'm sort of the opinion that if the courts don't wake up, if the medical establishment doesn't wake up and start, holding people accountable, there may come a time when people simply take matters into their own hands,
Hmm.
right? And that's not something I want to see, and that's certainly something I don't want to see happen. But when there's this much death and injury and destruction, and Dr. Peter McCullough talked about this as well. We've, I agree. We've both been shocked at how the family members of people who've died suddenly, and where the shot is a suspect, in these deaths. There's just been no sort of outcry, no anger. It's almost as if like the families are not reacting. You see very, very few families who then go on, take to social media and start fighting for their loved ones who died. You've got the Martin family in the United States. Their 18-year-old daughter, Trista Martin, took a Pfizer vaccine behind her parents' back because she wanted to go to concerts and she wanted her life back. And a month later, she basically dropped dead. She collapsed. They took her to the hospital. Her organs started shutting down. No doctors didn't know what was going on. She died in a couple of days. And it was only then, after she died, that the parents had found out from her friends that she went behind their back. She took a Pfizer vaccine because she wanted her life back. They are fighting publicly. They're speaking out and they're hammering, big pharma and trying to open people's eyes. There's a father in Ontario, Dan Hartman, whose son Sean, 17 years old, hockey player, again took a shot, dropped dead in his room about a month later. He's fighting very hard. But when you think of the thousands of young people who've died, and you can count the families who are fighting for their loved ones, you can count them on one or two hands. And I've been shocked at how passively people have accepted the damage and destruction that's been done to their loved ones.
And then you start to wonder, like, is this just how history unfolds? Right? Like we can look back 200 years ago and look at like the average working condition, and then we look at where we are now. And it's like, well, where did it happen? Where was the switch to you get weekends off, or you get health care, or there's a minimum wage, or there's OSHA? And we look back and it seems neat and concise. And it's like in 1805, if you were 10 years old, you were ready to work at the textile mill. And then it's 2023, and every corner has a pad on it because OSHA said so. And we just kind of accept it and don't really think about it. But like a lot of things happened in 200 years. A lot of people were, textile mills were ground up to meat. A lot of people fell off skyscrapers in the 30s
Yeah.
and 40s. A lot of people flew through non-shatterproof safety glass windshields. A lot of people had steering columns go through their chest.
Yeah.
We might just be watching the granular evolution of an industry. And in 100 years, they'll be like, oh yeah, no, the shot has to go through 15 years of trials, and someone might look back and go, you guys are forgetting that in like the 2020s, like 100,000 people just dropped dead from this thing. We
Yeah.
might just be watching the granular growing pains, and it seems so massive because we're in it now. It might just be that, and that's a pretty depressing, but I think
Well,
perhaps
what you're
real.
describing, I mean, what you're describing is a process, right?
Yeah,
It's basically not going to be like one event.
no,
It's going to be an ongoing process,
yeah,
right? And but I think it's well, and what sucks about it is that there are so many people that are being injured and are dying
oh
in
yeah,
the process,
yeah,
during the process, right? And people who shouldn't be dying. I mean, and again, it's like it as a physician, it frustrates me when like I was giving experimental shots to end stage cancer patients, and these were, I mean, in comparison to the jabs, these were safe, but even then I was, I had to give like the full informed consent, lay out all the risks. And but again, it was like risk benefit in an end stage cancer patient who was told they have 2 3 months to live, and I'm going to give you a radiation treatment and maybe you're going to live 5 years, 10 years, right, instead of 2 3 months. And that's what I was doing. But to be giving experimental treatments with a brutal side effect profile, as we know now, to be giving those to young completely healthy people where they get no benefit and all the risk, right? Because we know that young people are simply not affected by COVID-19. Like it's you can say 99.9% or 99.99% of people do just fine, right? With their own immune system when it comes to COVID-19. But to be giving experimental drugs to young, healthy people who didn't need it, and now they're dropping dead with heart attacks and strokes and turbo cancers and just dying suddenly, like that to me is just like just how can that still be happening? It's so frustrating.
I think we're, and let me to make my point. Let me make sure. Let's see. Hold on. Okay. Okay. So in World War II, we lost four. I know the first two facts, but off the top of my head, but I need a. Oh wow. Was that 15? Okay, yeah. So in World War II, the United States lost not casualties, deaths, 425,000 soldiers, right? That's a lot. Vietnam, 58,000. Roughly 1/10. It'd be 580, but let's just call it 1/10. Global war on terror. And so World War II, what we were involved for 4 years, 425,000. Vietnam was roughly twice as long with roughly 1/10 as many deaths. The global war on terror was twice as long as Vietnam, which was twice as long as World War II, and there were 7,000 deaths. So as the wars get longer, the number of deaths go down logarithmically. Tell that to someone in Vietnam, and they'd punch you in the face. But as we look at this, it's a 70, 80, I mean, 78 years ago today, 78 years and 4 hours ago, we dropped an atomic bomb on Nagasaki. Tell that to someone there, and they'd rightfully kick you in the nuts. But we are looking at a very slow process of it, for lack of a better word, becoming more humane or more palatable. And there will be another war, and it's again, yeah, tell that to the 7,000 families that buried a soldier, and they say shut up. But the
Well, I
numbers
mean,
are,
it depends though from which side you're looking at, right? I
well,
mean,
if you're
if you look
looking
at
at it from the Middle East, they lost 1.5 million. It's
exactly like,
yeah.
and if you look at like Ukraine, for example, I mean, Ukraine is a meat
Oh no.
grinder.
Oh yeah.
Hundreds of
No.
thousands of young soldiers dead
This
there, right?
analogy is
So
definitely is not universal. I mean, the
yeah.
Soviets lost 27 million in World War II. I'm aware of my American centric viewpoint, if that doesn't give it away. But just even as just a in a vacuum, uh, an analogy or whatever,
Mhm.
I don't know, a metaphor, allegory. I don't remember. I hated literature class. That's what this is. It's a very slow thing. that just might be what we're seeing. We're seeing and it's not that the war was nonstop. World War II ended 45. We started sending advisors to Nam and what, 65? Then you go 65 to 75. And then that roughly stopped. Sure, you had Desert Storm, Grenada, but I mean, you pretty much stopped for another 26 years, and then global war on terror started. So it comes in these spurts and growths. We might be watching a shakeup, and then it's just gonna kind of go. And the last one before, I don't know. I mean, one was thalidomide. One was the birth control. Was that 50s, 60s?
60s.
Yeah, and then I guess what a big one before. I mean, maybe opioid crisis. I guess that's still ongoing, but you have these things where it happens and it unfolds and it's terrible, and we won't let this happen again. And a politician signs a bill or whatever. We might just be watching this like very slow, almost glacial scale of change. And
Yeah, no, I see what you're saying,
you get what?
and
Yeah,
yeah, I see what you're saying, and especially like in war, it's kind of evolved in that sense, minimize casualties, and I think you could actually add to that. We're moving towards drones, right? So
yeah,
where you're completely minimizing casualties on your side, right? If we're talking about casualties on your side. Where I think this is different is that this is the first time. Now you could look at it two ways. You could say, well, this is a sort of a biological war in a sense. Maybe we might be in a biological war. We're not sure,
yeah.
right?
That
I
that
mean,
throws my example completely out the window. If this counts as bio war and we lost a million Americans, then this is twice as bad as World War II in half
and
the time.
but
And
but
I'm
if
an
it's
idiot.
if it's a biological war, and
Yeah,
and obviously there's a lot of argument around that. Well, who are we at war with, and so on, right? It's again, it's something new,
yeah.
right? It's something we really haven't seen before. And some people argue that we are in a sort of a biological warfare time now, and we're going to see new pandemics. And I think Robert Malone talks about fifth generation
Mhm.
warfare, and we don't know who the actors are and who's conducting these wars, and we might have other pandemics unleashed and so on. So that's one way to look at it. And if that's the case, then we might see the most casualties we'll ever see in a biological war, right? Scenario, right? I look at the excess deaths, and the excess deaths. That's a troubling. Those are troubling statistics because you've got last year you've got excess deaths in the U.S. of about 300,000, and you could argue this and that. Ed Dowd, looks
Mhm.
at the U.S. insurance data, and being a Wall Street guy,
Yeah,
and a
I've
numbers
had him on here a couple times.
and a numbers guy, right? And he plainly says, look, if you have any other explanation other than the COVID-19 vaccines, I'd love to hear it to
Yeah.
account for all the disabilities and the deaths. And now we're talking disabilities in the millions, so over a million. I think he said 1.7 million excess disabilities last year, and we're talking excess deaths in the hundreds of thousands in the United States, right? The estimates vary. It varies anywhere from 3 to 600,000, depends on how you look at it and so on. Same thing in Canada, excess deaths are in the tens of thousands. So these are large numbers, right? And if the shot is accounting for even a fraction of these, which I believe it's probably accounting for majority of them, that's my opinion, right? Then we have something brand new on a scale that we've never seen before. And it's this sort of biological war, you could sort of call it. That's one way, that's one aspect of it. The other aspect is that we've never, and this is from a medical medicine aspect, is, we've had all kinds of drugs. We've had all kinds, you can talk about thalidomide, opioids, what have you. Those are drugs. We've never had gene altering drugs or medications or treatments,
Mm.
something that potentially is messing with our DNA, right? And I mean, that's what mRNA is. Now, there's still hot debate about whether the mRNA in these shots is actually integrating into our DNA, and then we're producing spike protein indefinitely. There's a risk of that might be happening in at least a few people. Then you've got Kevin McKernan, the geneticist in the States, who's come out and says, look, there's DNA contamination
Mm.
in these vials. There's these plasmids that have the entire spike protein sequence. It's got some other sequences in there as well. that supposedly in the manufacturing of the mRNA actually help the manufacturing process, because they put these plasmids into E. coli and then they grow billions of E. coli in these vats, and then they collect the plasmids, and then that's how they make the mRNA, the process.
Sure.
And apparently there's all this DNA contamination. Well, the risk there is that DNA, if we're injecting this and we know that it ends up in the bloodstream and it goes systemic, well, now you've got foreign DNA that could much more easily integrate into our own DNA, or it could get into the E. coli in our gut, right? So now we could have E. coli in our gut with plasmids that they took in that have the spike protein sequence, right? So it's like there's all these possibilities of us and having our genetics altered in some way, right? And so that's something we've never dealt with before either. And these are huge risks that we know that Pfizer and Moderna didn't study, because they say it in their documents, in all their approval documents. They never studied genotoxicity for these mRNA shots. They never studied carcinogenicity, because they said, look, there's just no conceivable way that the mRNA could be doing this, so we just didn't study it. And it all got approved, right? Because there was just so much money to be made. So I think, you bring up an interesting, and I think you're right about the evolution of conventional war. We may be dealing with something brand new here, though.
Yeah, which completely flips my argument upside down and shoots it in the back of the head. Like, if it turns out this is what my point couldn't be, what's that line from Billy Madison where it's like, you are not only are you incorrect, but everyone in the room is dumber for you talking. Like, my point could be so I might be so wrong it's impressive that I couldn't be more wrong, right? It's because it would have been even shorter than World War II, and he killed even more people. So, that's also a case. But then you gotta, like, if we're just going down this road, then you gotta, like, some things just you wonder, like, are they trying to, like, spike it with misinformation when you see people that are like, yeah, there's also monkey AIDS in the shot, or they're like, we zoomed in and we found self-assembling nanotech from a classified DARPA. And I'm like, well, one, if that is true, then we're in hell and World War III has started.
Yep.
Another part of me thinks that I'm like, are you just spiking a story? So kind of back to the doctor thing. Tell them that weed will make them go crazy so they don't touch anything. Do you start pushing out stories so they go, oh, anyone that criticizes these shots is a conspiracy theory? I mean, some of that stuff, like, and again, maybe I'm laughably wrong, but some of that makes me raise my eyebrow when they're like, there's snake venom and nanobots in the shots. And I'm like, well, who's really saying that? Like,
Yeah.
some of that stuff's insane, in my opinion.
Yeah. Well, you know what? I mean, this is the difficulty that I run into, is that I also have to, kind of look at all this, because we're basically we've got so much information,
Yeah,
that it's hard to sort of weed out, what's legit, what's not. And you're right. It's very easy to basically put the turd in the punch bowl, so to speak, right?
yeah,
Where you basically, put something in and it kind of poisons the whole thing,
yeah,
right? Or poisons the discussion on the whole area, right? And so it's like, well, in this whole, 5G and self-assembling nanotechnology, and it's like, I see these pictures and I see something, with corners that supposedly is assembling and what have you. I don't know what that stuff is, right? And so I try to keep an open mind. At the same time, I have to stay grounded, right? I mean, as a physician, I kind of try to stay grounded with what I can prove, or what I think that there's, a lot of evidence for. And even, in medicine, you'll have doctors who will look at what I'm talking about and reporting, and they'll say, well, he's completely crazy, right? mRNA is safe and effective. It could never cause cancer. It could never do this or that. Or myocarditis is mild and rare. You get a little bit of inflammation of the heart, and it goes away after a few days and you're fine, right? And so there's obviously different levels to the information, and whether it's believable or not, and how much evidence there is to support it. And it's hard. I'm telling you, it's hard to weed out, what's real, what's not, what's true, and what's not. And that's the difficulty I face, even just in medicine, in the plain stuff like the heart attacks the strokes, the myocarditis that are literally happening in front of people's eyes.
Yeah.
Right. And you try to say, look, there may be an association. Let's do the autopsies. Let's stain for the spike protein. We can actually figure out you stain for the spike protein and you stain for another protein in the virus. If both are present, it's COVID, it's long COVID. Boom, you've just solved the mystery. Long COVID is causing all these heart attacks, strokes, turbo cancers, right? And that's what, the medical establishment would love to see, prove it that it's long COVID. And I would be all for that. Let's prove it, right? If you do the staining and you got the spike protein and you have no other viral proteins, it's the vaccine, because the vaccine only has the spike protein. It's got no other components of the virus. If you take a dead person's, tissues and you're only getting the spike protein staining in the heart and the brain, then it's the vaccine. Sorry, but it's the vaccine that's causing the death, not long COVID, right? This can be done. They're not doing it. The medical establishment is deliberately not doing any of this kind of testing because they don't want the association made.
Yeah, it's like I don't, part of me just has this like childish view of like we're gonna find out one day, and I told you so. But like this November is the 60th anniversary of JFK getting popped, and no one's still quite certain who it is.
Yeah,
like so like it might be like a no, man, you're going to your grave not knowing. The idea of the truth is gonna this isn't a movie. It doesn't have to wrap up in 3 hours. There's no, there was no focus group. They didn't look at the plot and plug up all the holes. Like, what's that quote? The universe is under no obligation to make sense. Yeah, the idea that like we're gonna find out who released it and who, probably not, man. I might be 80 and they'll be like, Tommy, you did a podcast way back in the day. What do you think now? And I'll be like, I'm just as confused as ever. I have no idea. I have no idea.
This is the same concept you're just bringing up. This is the same concept in the stock markets when something crazy is going on. And the saying goes, the markets can stay irrational longer than you can remain solvent. Right. And so it's like it was like the movie The Big Short. I don't know if you saw the movie, right? But it's like they're betting on the housing crisis and the market collapsing, and it just wouldn't collapse, right? And they're getting squeezed and squeezed and squeezed, and everyone thinks they're crazy, and they're like, we're right, but it's like it's taking way longer, for example, for people to realize what was going on than it actually should. And we got the same problem here. I think it's like we're almost 3 years in to the vaccine rollout, and we don't even have like the basic, even some of the basic concepts are still being like completely denied.
Yeah.
Right, in terms of safety, efficacy, and all that stuff.
Yeah.
Right? So this could be a long, ugly, grinding process. And I always say, like, I'm like, would I rather, be willfully blind and be collecting my, big paychecks and be pushing the vaccine and have taken the vaccine and given it to my kids? Or would I be rather, jobless, unemployed, my license stripped from me, my reputation completely destroyed, my colleagues not talking to me, but be on this side of things and, be awake and have protected my family from the shots and trying to wake other people up from the shots? What side would I want to be on? Right? It's like Cypher from the Matrix. He wants to be plugged back in. He wants to be enjoying his steak and be a millionaire, and he doesn't want to live in the real world, right? But I would rather be on this side of things than be sort of, blind and, be on the other side if pushing the shots, right?
If being willfully ignorant didn't hurt anyone else, just being like completely realistic. Like, I've been doing this show since December 2019. I got banned from YouTube in August 2021. Essentially had to rebuild the entire thing on Rumble. And I'm very proud of it. I'm proud of the interviews I've done. I'm proud of kind of standing up, and if I think something's wrong, I've lost most of, if not really all, except like 3 of my friends because they think I'm an anti-vaxxer. It's but looking at data and talking to doctors and being like, something's wrong. And on one hand, I'm like very proud of that.
Mm-hmm.
And because people will be hurt, even if the amount that I'm doing is tiny. Doing this, there's 17,000 subscribers. I'm not Joe Rogan. The fact that if I don't, it is on my conscience that maybe one person saw one of my shows and decided not to get this shot, and because of that, maybe they didn't drop that. In 2014, I lost a brother to suicide. I know what immediate death in a family does. I'm still dealing. It's 9 years later. It's still part of my daily life, right? If I can help like one, then I know I've done the right thing. Now, just being completely pragmatic and red pilled, maybe even black pilled. If this wasn't hurting anyone, I don't know how in what universe that would be possible, but let's just say somehow this shot isn't hurting. Let's just say it's saline. Honestly, if I could go back, I'd probably just shut up and just grow my show. But that's not the case. People are getting hurt. If this whole thing wasn't about vaccines, but instead about buying like Beanie Babies or Pokemon cards, yeah, I'd go back and just push it and just be like, you know what, I'm gonna make my money, whatever. But I wish I was soulless. Like I wish I could have a lobotomy. I wish I could remove that internal monologue that says, "Hey, that was the wrong thing to do." It would
Yeah.
be easier, but I can't. And so I'm with you. I'd rather be on this side. It's
Can
just
you imagine? Can you imagine what these doctors are now faced with? Now, imagine like you were like, your typical doctor and you meant well. Because I think actually a lot of these doctors probably meant
yeah,
well, right? They just, they didn't have time and they're like, look, someone else must have looked at it and said it's safe and effective.
yeah.
It's got to
So
be safe and
whatever.
effective.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, we're busy. I mean, we're like when I had a full practice, I was seeing like a dozen cancer patients a day, very complicated. Like I would come home at like 6 or 7 p.m. I would collapse on the couch and like pass out, not even have dinner, not have time to play with my kids and like fall asleep. Right. That was
Yeah.
my routine when I had a full busy sort of cancer clinic practice. Um, so can you imagine what these doctors are going to be faced with now that they were kind of like, for two years they bought into the narrative. They took the shots. They took like 4 shots. They gave the shots to all their kids, family members, all their friends, whatever. And they kept making good money. They've got a few million in the bank account. Their mortgage is paid. They're doing great. And then suddenly they start noticing, their patients are dropping dead or they're developing cancers or someone in their family drops dead, and they start putting two and two together. They start looking at maybe they see maybe they see your podcast, maybe they see my interviews somewhere else, maybe they see Dr. McCullough speaking about something and they're like, holy cow, like what the heck is going on? Imagine like they start getting hit with that realization of, like you said, people are getting hurt. This is not just like, oopsie, I made a bad recommendation. You got a vaccine that didn't work. Like let's say the flu shots, right? You
Yeah.
take a flu shot, probably doesn't work.
Yeah.
Might even make you a bit sick. The only flu shot I ever took actually made me extremely sick. Annual flu shots, right?
I've never
So,
taken
but
one.
imagine now they come to the realization that like they have harmed somebody with their advice, with their ignorance, and it's their patients who trusted them. It could be their kids, it could be their family members, cousin, aunts, uncles. Like imagine the mentally the realization that you've done harm and people trusted you. Like people like I don't care about the politicians, right? The politicians are politicians. We know most of them are
They're
sleazy,
they're demons
corrupt.
from hell. Whatever.
There you go. And the thing is, we know, right? Like we
Yeah.
know politicians are politicians. They're
Yeah.
not scientists. They're not doctors. They don't have this background. They don't understand this stuff, right? They get a narrative, whatever. But doctors know better or should know better, right? And I think doctors are going to be faced with a very hard reality that they caused harm. And then the question is, how do you deal with it? And at that point, it's like, you're like, okay, do you stay silent? And do you keep causing harm? Like, because I've seen so few doctors that have come out and said, you know what? I messed up. I effed up. I made a big mistake. I was pushing these shots. I'm sorry. I'm going to do better. I'm going to now. And there are people like that. There's Dr. Asim Malhotra, the UK
Mm-hmm.
cardiologist, who supported and pushed the shots in the beginning. Then his father died. And then he came to the realization, he looked at the data again, he reviewed the clinical trials, and he's like, oh my God, these things are horrible. These things should never be on the market. And now he's basically, fighting to get them off the market.
Mm.
But you can literally count those people on like one hand who've come to some kind of a realization and said, no, I made a mistake and I'm going to own up to it and take responsibility. And it's just, I don't know how these doctors are dealing with it psychologically, the realization what they've done.
Yeah. And like the people that do change positions, that's fine. Like that's all right, yeah, man. That's life. Like
Yeah.
you ever got in like an argument with a friend or something, been too drunk, and like the next day, and someone else tells you what you did, and the first part of the ego is like, no, I wasn't wrong, and then finally you gotta like call your friend. You're like, hey man, I did not realize how drunk I was last night. I'm an asshole. I'm sorry. And if your friend is a normal human being, they'll probably go, I've been there too, dude. It's all right. Right?
I mean, listen, we all make mistakes.
It's a
Right?
humbling feeling,
Everyone
but
makes some mistakes.
it's
Everyone makes
cathartic.
mistakes. Yeah.
I think there's something, if you know it's bad and you keep doing it, either you're a psychopath and you feel no way about it,
Or you're a coward.
or you're a coward and you're gonna, man, you gotta. I would hate to be that person alone in their head, alone
I
in the
think
shower, alone at night. What is it?
I think we're there. I think we're getting there.
What?
I
What?
think I think there's a group of doctors, there's a percentage of them, I don't know what it is, 10, 15, 20%, who are waking up and realizing what's happened and what this is all about, right? And
Yeah,
how people have been harmed, right?
yeah,
And then and like you said, it's a process. So as time goes by, more people are going to wake up. And I don't know how these doctors and scientists, I don't know how they're going to deal with it. I honestly don't know.
bottle of alcohol. You probably see suicide.
Yeah.
I mean, just probably see something like that. Just total dissociation. I was just following orders, right? That famous line.
Well, look at what happened. I mean, to Germany.
Well, yeah.
I mean, Germans, I mean, to this day, I think on some level, they are still
Oh,
living the
they're
guilt.
still psychically wounded.
They're still living the guilt
Yeah,
of what they supported during World War II.
yeah,
And I mean, they put Hitler into power. It wasn't like he was democratically elected.
yeah.
It wasn't a coup d'etat. It wasn't invasion from somewhere else. I mean, they kept electing this guy, right? I mean, he had the support of
He
the
did
majority
burn.
of the people.
He did burn down the beer hall, the
Yeah,
Reichstag fire.
yeah. But
But
again,
yeah,
it's
yeah,
and look at but look at the guilt, right?
yeah,
That they've carried for decades
yeah,
afterwards.
yeah. And the difference between like the Nazi high command, the ones who know what they did. I mean, there are so many of them that still, even right before they were hung, were like Heil Hitler. They're done. Those are demons. Those are demons from hell in the form of a
Yeah.
demon.
Well, we have them. We have them all over medicine, right? We've got them in medicine. We've got them in science. These people who are just like unapologetically just
Yeah.
they must know on some level there's something wrong, and they just keep pushing and pushing and pushing.
Then there's some videos of I think German soldiers being forced to watch videos of the liberation of the camps, and not like the SS or the SA, but actual Wehrmacht soldier, just the poor 18-year-old grunts on the front line. The videos of them having to watch, yeah, there's like videos pointed at them, and they're watching a projector of the Allies opening the gates of Auschwitz and finding the piles of bodies. And then there's another. It's a dark video, but there's another video you can find on YouTube where they're taking all the townspeople that were within like a mile or two of Dachau, and they're just, I mean, like old women and stuff, and it's just American GIs kind of at gunpoint making them just walk through Auschwitz. And there's a table of one of the skin lamps and some of like the removed shriveled heads like Mengele as experiments, and you just see the people walking through, and like they walk through, and it's pretty much universal. Then they all double over and just vomit. Like it's something like that, man.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
it will all karma will it does balance out. Not necessarily in our lifetimes, but the truth just will be. It will come out, it will manifest. The tax man's coming.
Yeah.
And I guess I'm just kind of like what you said. I'm okay with where I am. I can look back when this is all over, and if someone asks me in 50 years, like, what did you do during that? Well, I can point to my podcast and be like, I lost just about every financial opportunity and most of my friends. But
Yeah.
but I think I
Yeah.
did the right thing. So I think that's
Honestly,
really
like
all we can do.
I'm in the same boat. I took massive hits, financially, my friends, family, what have you, like losses everywhere. I'm unemployable, job opportunities, career down the toilet, cancer research. I can't do cancer research anymore. Can't treat cancer patients, can't diagnose cancer patients. Like I've lost a lot, but I'm perfectly happy where I'm at right now and
Yeah.
doing what I'm doing. I wouldn't be anywhere else. I wouldn't be doing anything else.
Yeah.
So, and I think a lot of people are going to be kind of faced with that decision. Ultimately, who do they want to be, and can they live with who they are and what they're doing? Right. I think a lot of people will be facing very difficult decisions. I'm happy that I'm actually don't have to face that decision. Right. Like those decisions have been made earlier in the pandemic. And like I said, I'm happy where I'm at. I've got a great, family, supportive family. I've got enough to put food on the table. But the people who are facing those decisions right now, man, those are going to be difficult decisions.
There's an invaluable piece. I'm a chronically anxious person, but man, I like I can lay down in bed at night, and there's no what was the poem? Was it The Raven by Edgar Allan Poe? I remember we had to read that in like middle school or something. It's like a guy that killed someone and he's like hearing a raven or like something like knocking. You know what I'm talking
Oh,
about?
oh
I
yeah,
don't.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
It's just like I forget what it is. He's going crazy or something, but it's like he had done something. Either he murdered someone. I don't remember what it is, but it's just this like constant knock, driving him crazy. And you know what? Maybe my podcast could be 1,000 times bigger if I was pushing Pfizer shots, but I don't have the knocking. I
yeah.
just I have a lot of mean texts and a lot of mean emails telling me I'm an anti-vaxxer Nazi,
The hate mail.
misogynist. Yeah, that's I mean that, but that's whatever. That's I'm so immune. Those words have lost all meaning. They're like you're a
Yeah,
racist, Nazis. I'm like I get it. Yeah, I did 9/11 too. Whatever. But like there's a piece in there, and I can I'm proud of myself, and I know what I did, and I think
yeah,
that's maybe really all you can ask for. I don't know.
yeah. I mean, I look at some of my colleagues, like some of the doctors that ended up dying suddenly, right? And there was a cardiologist, 52-year-old guy in New Brunswick, Dr. Sohrab Lachmedial, very successful guy, probably had a few $1 million in the bank,
Ooh.
like one of the most successful cardiologists. And he would put out stuff on Twitter like, I want to punch anti-vaxxers in the face, and if they drop dead, I'm not going to cry at their funeral and this kind of stuff. And he made these posts maybe a couple of weeks, maybe a month or two before he died suddenly. And he took the booster shot, and 2 weeks later he died in his sleep. And I'm thinking, like, basically devastated family,
Mm,
right? Kids don't have their dad anymore. And you think, like, I mean, unfortunately, he never got a second chance. He never got a chance to wake up, right? He
mm,
never got a chance to sort of even go through that decision making process of maybe he wants to do things differently, right?
yeah.
He just never got that chance. He made good money. He was well off, highly respected, right to the very end. Super highly respected, amazing job. Took the shots, died in his sleep, right? And then you think like, well, and there's a lot that this is not a one-off. There's a lot of stories like that where, the people who pushed the shots ended up dying suddenly, and they had everything. They didn't lose everything. They didn't lose their friends. They didn't lose their families. They had all the money they could have wanted, and yet they're dead, and their families are now picking up the pieces of their lives, and they don't have their father, mother, what have you, right? So it's tragic. It's tragic when a person doesn't even get a chance to realize that maybe they're doing something wrong, or that maybe whatever they're involved in is wrong, right? And I sincerely hope that people do get that chance, right, to have their eyes opened, and then make the decision. Do you want to stay silent? Do you want to keep injecting people because it's good for your bank account, even if they're dropping dead in your clinic? Or do you want to be a different person? Do you want to be, do you want to do things differently? So I hope people actually get that chance to wake up and make those choices, and hopefully make the right choice.
Yeah, and everyone deserves a second chance. I mean,
Yeah.
you know, this podcast could have, played out even just somewhat differently. And maybe I never met a doctor who wanted to talk about this, that, or the other thing. Maybe I'd be 3 years in saying, how come these anti-vaxxers just won't take the shot? Like, so I have to remain empathetic. Like, who I work very hard, but I mean, who knows how many things have just fallen into my lap?
Yeah.
I could very well be a guy going, man, I did 200 episodes telling people to get the shot. I ridiculed people. I made fun of them. Like, and I would want people to give me a second chance to say, well, X, Y, and Z happened, and there's a trillion variables in life. And, maybe once presented with the facts, Tommy did change his, maybe, is it what, Asim Malhotra? Is that
Yeah.
his name? Malhotra? I always forget his name. That could have just as easily been me, right? Or
Could have
just
been
as
any
easily
one
been
of
you.
us. Could have been any one of us. And I always, when people have these strong reactions, right? Let's say when a police officer dies suddenly, and they're like, "Well, good, he was enforcing vaccine mandates." Well, maybe he was, maybe he wasn't, right? Or same with the doctors. Good, that's one less doctor to inject. And I hate those reactions. I know where that anger is coming from.
Sure.
I don't agree with that because, like I said, I do believe that everyone deserves a second chance, and it's not for me to judge their life circumstances.
Yeah.
Like you said, we came on this path for various reasons. Maybe we were fortunate, right? Maybe we were lucky. Who knows? But I think empathy is going to be key. I think we cannot judge those who didn't come to the same path, and like you said, I do believe everyone deserves a second chance to do the right thing, right?
Yeah.
And then, of course, if they're willingly and knowingly, doing the wrong thing, that's a separate issue.
Sure.
Those people should be prosecuted and properly, and so on.
Sure.
But I think we're
Absolutely.
going to see a lot of that. I think a lot of people are going to start waking up and realize what they did, and the role that they played in this whole thing, right? I mean, there were a lot of people who supported vaccine passports and
Yeah.
who were laughing at people who couldn't go to restaurants, like
Yeah.
myself, or who couldn't take their kids swimming, couldn't
Yeah.
enter the rec center. And I had to tell my kids, listen, you guys know where the change rooms are, just go, and you'll be fine, because I couldn't step foot into the building because didn't have the required number of jabs, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, empathy is going to be a big thing.
And then I guess we'll maybe wrap it up with this is, you know, what are you and I in a blind spot of right now? Not even with medicine. It's like using a camera and an iMac. These are made with rare earth minerals. I loosely am aware of the injustices of child mines in South Africa. getting the cobalt and the, was it like lanthanide and all the other rare earth minerals used for it? Am I a slave driver? Am I making this? No. Should I probably look into that more? Is there a more ethical way to get some of this machinery? And it sounds silly kind of saying, you're like, yeah, I mean, I don't know, where else would I get this camera? But you have to put yourself in those shoes, right? If you're some kid right now in an African mine, you're digging up cobalt, you might be looking at us and going, man, those jerks doing that podcast, they are willingly killing me and my friends, versus you and I are just, we're like loosely like is it from the, I don't even know, maybe this is ethically made, I have no idea. You have to understand that maybe the person you hate is as completely out of the loop as I am about the origin of the, the sensor in this Nikon. I don't even Sony. I don't even know what camera it is. Like, I might be that completely oblivious
Yeah,
to something else.
yeah, and I mean, there's always. I think that comes down to there's always room for self improvement and sort of questioning. What you're doing, is it right? And people are not doing that. I think especially when it comes to this COVID thing. And again, I come back to the doctors. I'm like, are you guys not even questioning like the shots? You're not questioning the shots. You're not questioning even just the whole like loss of bodily autonomy, the loss of informed consent. Are you not questioning any of these things? Like, and I think there's just people don't reflect, right? That's basically what you're referring to is self-reflection, right? And there's just so little of that going on. If there was more self-reflection, maybe we wouldn't be in the mess that we are right now, right? So I mean, I agree with you. I think everyone should be self-reflecting and questioning things, the things that you believe in so wholeheartedly, right? Well, is it really? Because some of these people, they believe the shots completely. Like they believe, they're like, I've looked, I've done the research, I've listened to the authorities, and I believe these shots are 100% safe and effective. And you're a racist, misogynist, complete, lunatic anti-vaxxer. And I'm thinking, I'm sitting here thinking I probably had more vaccines than you've had.
Yeah.
Right. Being in medicine, I've taken probably a lot more shots than you have, but here you are calling me an anti-vaxxer and a lunatic.
Yeah.
Right. So, I mean, if everyone did that, the self-reflection, I think would be in a much, much better place.
And then there's like just a kind of just a side note, the total, like, I don't know how people hold these two views in their head at the same time, where I will be yelled at as an anti-vaxxer, but then, because I've had on Dr. Malone like 30 times, I'll have on Dr. Malone, and in the same breath, they'll say that I have a CIA handler and I have him on to disseminate pro-regime propaganda. I'm like, which one is it? Like, you know, am I the, you can't call Dick Cheney both a pacifist and a warmonger. Right?
Yeah.
He's a pacifist. He won't defend this country. He also killed 1 million brown kids in Iraq. Like, which one? You gotta make up your mind. You gotta make up your mind. But apparently I'm both.
But
So
I mean, but that's people who sort of don't think about these things too much in depth, right?
yeah, and then you realize you're like, oh, there's not a whole lot going on in their head. It's just kind of buzzwords.
Yeah.
Racist, misogynist, Hitler. I'm like, all right, thank you. And then yeah, people are always commenting like negative stuff or disliking my videos. And I always tell them, in terms of how the Rumble algorithm works, all engagement is is weighed the same. So if you comment this show sucks, that is just as good as a comment as this show's great. It's helping me nonetheless. So I guess for the people that hate watch me, keep doing it. You're putting money in my bank. Thank you. But
I
yeah,
think
man.
it's just part. It's just it comes with the territory, right? I mean, this is I deal with the kind of like hate mail and death threats and people wishing death upon me, right?
Yeah.
They're like, you're. I mean, I had Keith Olbermann telling me I'm going to burn in hell.
Interesting.
Right? Like I had Keith Olbermann reply to one of my posts, and he said, "You're going to burn in hell." for this,
That's
right?
pretty impressive, man.
Okay, wow.
That's
Yeah.
that's a trophy. You should
I
put that
guess,
on.
yeah,
Yeah.
I should frame that one.
Yeah, I haven't gotten any comments like that. That's pretty impressive. I would like
So
one like that.
I must be doing something right.
Yeah. Yeah, man. To have him tell you you're gonna burn in hell, that's something. Should should pat yourself on the back.
Exactly.
I've gotten some comments from some semi-famous people, but I haven't gotten anything like that. I would I really want to get blocked by Dr. Fauci. Some people I've had on the show have been blocked by Dr. Fauci on Twitter or Dr. Hotez. I haven't been able to get blocked yet, so kind of upset about that.
Oh, Hotez
But
has blocked me. Yeah. Yeah.
I'm so jealous. I can't get him to block me. I I just gotta work harder. You know, maybe one day I will.
You got to do more anti-vax stuff. You got
Yeah.
to.
Damn it. I know. Crap. Well, Dr. Makis, let's wrap this. Matt, excuse me. Let's wrap this one up, man. Thank you for
Yeah,
coming on here. That was great, guys. Go into the description. I think I have a link to your thing on the wellness company, as well as I don't know. I have all your links in the description. Thank
sounds
you
good.
so
People
much,
can
man.
find me on Twitter, MakisMD, and Substack, makismd.substack.com.
I think I have those. Let me make sure. I think I have those in there. Let's see. I have your Substack. I don't have your Twitter. Let me find your Twitter right now, just so I don't forget to do it. What's the Twitter?
At MakisMD.
Yes. MD. There we go. All right. I'll put that. I'll copy and paste that into the description right now. And yeah, your wellness company thingy is in there. And yeah, dude, thank you so much for coming on. Thank you for your patience with the shaky start. And yeah, if you ever want to, dude, I'd love to have you on again sometime.
Absolutely. Thanks. It was a pleasure.
All right, dude. Thank you so much. Guys, thank you